So the other day, I got a comment on a video that I did on Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson demanding accountability for right-wing election deniers and the people that tried to overturn the election. And it was darn near in Salty Saturday. But instead, I felt a little bit better to give it a non-flippant response, because while I disagree with this person just fundamentally, I think, sir or ma'am, you are reachable. Hal, so presumably sir. Here it is. Dude, how old are you? That's an impatient and adolescent-sounding position. Can't you hear the train yet? I don't understand the train part of that comment. But there is quite literally a train outside my house, and yes, I hear it frequently. There's train tracks there. Look, it is drilled into us in the United States to give all faith to the powers that be, to have patience, and to never demand accountability, never demand justice. And it's done 1,000 different ways. But the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of the Department of Justice? What are they trying to accomplish? Why even pursue criminals at all? When somebody breaks the law, what are you trying to get done? There's a couple of different reasons that you would try to pursue somebody and potentially incarcerate them, but you would levy punishment against somebody that's committed a crime. Number one is to set an example to people who would try to commit that crime in the future. Number two is to give some sort of justice to those who were wronged by the crime. But most importantly, the number one reason is to stop that crime spree from continuing. So this person is angry that I'm advocating strongly for action now, immediately, from our Department of Justice, and that I think so little of our Department of Justice, particularly at the federal level, for their lack of action so far. They're saying, "Oh, that's a childish way to look at it." Well, allow me to show you this clip from a couple days back as well. Ari Melber talking to Adam Schiff, offering a similar take. And I'm going to add my commentary as well. But listen to what the man has to say, and I think you'll find it lines up more or less with what I am saying here on What You Can Do.
Well, I give a lot of credit to the Fulton County DA. I think she's been really courageous, and she has moved with swiftness to conduct this investigation. It begs the question why it has taken the Justice Department so long. It's very unusual for a local county DA, in a case of national significance and federal significance, to be way out ahead of the Justice Department. But it will be fascinating when we get to see more of this report. I understand why it was redacted. The priority is to bring people to justice here. And I think the judge didn't want to disclose anything that might interfere with the investigation. Telling, too, that as we found in our investigation in Congress, where we had very serious concerns about perjury, that similarly, the grand jury in Fulton County has the same concerns, maybe over some of the same witnesses. We were particularly concerned with the fact that some of our witnesses shared common counsel, counsel that may be beholden to the former president, and in cases that counsel was essentially coaching the witness to say that the witness forgot things that they didn't forget, that they did, in fact, recall and could testify to. And it will be interesting to see whether the concerns in Georgia go beyond that.
So step number one, he points out that it's unusual. It is unusual that a state-level prosecutor, in this case, the Fulton County District Attorney, would be ahead of a federal prosecutor. Why is that unusual? Well, they've got state-level resources. Theoretically, Merrick Garland's Justice Department has all of the United States backing it. In other words, it has taken this long for Merrick Garland by choice. He has chosen to take, what are we going on to 3 years? We're eyeballing 3 years. If there was, in terms of prosecuting people who tried to do a coup in the United States of America, a coup, you understand? So, if ever there was a situation where we needed to see how fast the Justice Department is capable of mobilizing, is capable of putting together one case, not charging for everything that was done, but at least one thing to get started, to get people in prison, and we can go from there. Now would be that time. A year ago would have been that time. I'm not trying. Don't harass this person in the comments. I'm talking to you a little harsh, but I'm trying to reach you because this patience is lethal. You have been trained to be, frankly, passive. And democracy, it doesn't work if you just close your eyes and cover your ears and trust in Daddy to get it taken care of for you. Doesn't work like that. Let's let Adam Schiff make the point even more clear.
Yeah, you're putting your finger on the big question. Does it go beyond that to other charges? When you look at the number of target letters, and those rules vary from state to state, when she says charging decisions are imminent, are you interpreting that as some of those decisions will be to indict people, or that this could be an informational process with no further indictments in Georgia?
To me, as a former prosecutor, I guess I read a little bit more into it than you have. When a prosecutor talks about charging decisions, I tend to infer from that suggests that someone will be charged. Often when there is a decision not to prosecute, there really isn't a public statement. The investigation doesn't get punctuated by we finished the investigation and here's our result, which is no one gets indicted. I also, and maybe I'm reading too much into the language, which you could take either way, but the fact that they talk about indictments and that they'll make public their recommendations on indictments doesn't sound to me on the surface of it like their recommendations are against indicting. But I think what will also be important is whether Georgia got answers we couldn't get from witnesses that wouldn't cooperate with us, and for which, when we went to the Justice Department for help in enforcing the subpoenas, sometimes they helped us and sometimes they didn't. Even witnesses that went into the Fulton County grand jury, though, may have invoked privileges that the grand jury wasn't in a position to rapidly overcome. So we didn't learn that much from what was released, but we did see they did a thorough job, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were indictments that came out of it.
And you could think that could be when?
Well, it still could be some time because the work that was done by this investigative grand jury doesn't, all kind of flow over to the new grand jury. A new grand jury would have to be invoked. I'm not sure that simply on the basis of the report, the prosecutors would seek these indictments. It may be certain witnesses would need to be brought back before the new grand jury, or at a minimum, you would want testimony from agents that participated in the investigation as to what witnesses said. So it could still be some time, but But frankly, both in the Fulton County case as in the Department of Justice, where they're starting to bring in or try to bring in the very high-level people like the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and the vice president, it certainly looks like in both investigations we're much closer to the end than we are to the beginning.
Yeah, really striking to hear you say that. And again, you're sort of turning our viewers' attention to the fact that in your interpretation, it may be that the reference to some of those things means something above zero, that you wouldn't publicly make those references to nothing, to simplify it. So I appreciate your analysis there. You certainly know your way around these issues, Congressman. As for Mr. Meadows, I mean, I just want to be clear. January 6th committee now has completed its work. We're in a new Congress. But the committee, and you're one of the key investigators on it, didn't just sort of shape the DOJ probe or have a head start. Compared to the initial approach that Garland's investigators had, at times the committee was lapping them. And we see that quite factually in the Meadows scenario, because I just want to point to this reporting. This is brand new reporting out of the Journal and CNN. Meadows subpoenaed by special counsel in their January 6th investigation. So these are two outlets tonight. NBC hasn't confirmed this, Congressman, who are tonight here in 2023 reporting a new or recent subpoena of Mr. Meadows. You guys did it immediately, basically, which puts you in the position to then ask for, as you put it, the DOJ's help. They did act and indict two people based on your contempt citations and two others not. One of the not was Mark Meadows. So
I just want to be clear. The January 6th committee is nothing but our representatives. In that is our representatives in Congress. They are civilians. They're not the Department of Justice. They were way ahead of Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland spent a ton of time, tremendous amount of time, focusing on the prosecutions of little fish. I don't know how much he was planning on learning from the individual rioters. Maybe there would have been a grand case to make. But, boy, I gotta tell you, start with the obvious crimes that played on national television. Start there. And if it turns out there was a larger conspiracy to be charged, which seems likely based upon the January 6th committee's findings, you can charge that as well. But if you are operating, sir, under the idea that you can only pick one crime that was done and charge that and nothing else, you're wrong. Plain and simple, you're wrong. And the fact that Donald Trump is again running for president, has been able to announce that, is a failure of our Justice Department. It's that simple.
I give all of that preamble to say, what the heck are they doing over there? Why were you 2 years ahead of them? And with all due respect to them, is this concerning to you at an investigative, nonpartisan level?
Say it again, Ari. One more time.
What the heck are they doing over there? Why were you 2 years ahead of them? And with all due respect to them, is this concerning to you at an investigative, nonpartisan level?
It is very concerning to me that it's taken this long, and I think it's the product of two factors. I think one, Merrick Garland wanted to avoid even the appearance of any kind of partiality, given the terrible job that Bill Barr did, one of his predecessors who so badly politicized the Justice Department. And I think in an effort to reestablish the independence of the Justice Department, was very loath to immerse the department in controversy. While that is laudable, taken too far, it confers a kind of immunity on the former president for very serious misconduct. The other reason why I think it's taken the Justice Department so long is while they moved swiftly to go after those who broke into the Capitol on January 6th and beat and assaulted police officers with the idea of rolling those people up on people higher up in the seditious conspiracy. There were multiple lines of effort to overturn the election, not just on January 6th. Georgia is Exhibit A, with the fake elector plot in Georgia, with the former president's phone call with the Secretary of State demanding those 11,780 votes that don't exist. And mind you, demanding them even after he's told by his own top Justice Department officials that the claims of fraud in Georgia are a bunch of BS. And so instead of beginning the investigation contemporaneously looking into each of these multiple lines of effort, they really seem to have a sole focus on those committing assault and seditious conspiracy at the Capitol that day. And that meant that these other lines of investigation were much delayed, and I think to the detriment of the public.
So again, Garland, following the playbook that has been used throughout America's history to protect the powerful at the expense of everybody else. Garland focused on the little fish, hoping that we would applaud, that the media would take up the cheer and get us going and say, yay, yay. You got a bunch of nameless randos. How many did he get? A couple hundred? Oh, good for you, Garland. He focused on that instead of focusing on the people who organized a coup. It is not a crazy position to take in insisting that our Justice Department do its goddamn job, in insisting that it live up to the ideals that we claim we don't follow, but we claim to believe in the United States, which is that nobody is above the law, not a president, not a congressman, nobody. And it is of grave concern to me that we got somebody out there who isn't saying, oh boy, this is all a lie, but in fact seems to believe that these things happened, but simply that we must continue waiting. We must continue letting them build a case forever. We got 4 years between elections. 4 years between elections. Realistically, campaigning for elections start halfway through that time. They start 2 years before the actual election happens. If you want to make changes in the United States about when you can campaign, yeah, that's a worthy conversation to have. However, Merrick Garland, who is, credit where it's due, a savvy individual, he's aware of that timeline. And he has let this go. He chose the wrong priorities. I hope you will consider holding the Justice Department to a higher standard. We all have to. And by the way, link is in the description. If you would like to give Merrick Garland a piece of your mind, he ought to hear it. He should hear that you are simply not satisfied with the job he's done, if in fact you are not satisfied. I'll tell you, I'm not. I think he has done a terrible job. In case you are not aware of how bad this is, let me just tell you historically how many law-breaking presidents we have allowed to get away with crime in office. Crimes in office. Every one of these cats committed crimes while in office. Have a look at him. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump. That is every Republican president from Nixon till now. They have all committed crimes in office. Every single one of them. I enjoy giving Nixon a pass for Watergate because it is so easy to make this argument. There are so many crimes to pick from. How about the Chennault affair? Sabotaging Vietnam peace talks. Then, of course, yes, Watergate as well, for which he was pardoned. He was allowed, it was acknowledged that he did it, and he was simply allowed to go. That in and of itself was an attempted coup, by the way. Rigging an election, that's what that is. Ronald Reagan, with his then Vice President, George H.W. Bush, the Iran-Contra affair. It was an arms deal to fund a coup in Nicaragua. He was funding far-right terrorists to do away with a socialist government. What was the punishment? None for those two. Oliver North was the fall guy. He barely received any punishment. In fact, a few years later, he was heading the NRA. That was his epilogue. George W. Bush got 7,000 American servicemen and women killed and 8,000 contractors killed. An unknown number of civilians throughout the Middle East killed on a lie that he knew was a lie. He was told there was no evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Well, he was in office. What did he have Colin Powell say? Under oath to Congress? Well, there was evidence of weapons of mass destruction. That's why we've got to go to war. We went to war on a lie. People act like he is a sweet old man. Now he is a criminal that ought to be in prison. And then, of course, Donald Trump for a litany of crimes. And honest to God, more crimes than I am capable of listing with any degree of thoroughness in a single stream. I might do a marathon stream where I just try to list all of his alleged crimes. That attitude of just wait, just be patient. Well, the Justice Department, it's a complicated thing. It's not that complicated, folks. Don't rely just on Merrick Garland. Bonnie Willis has shown us, by the way, so has Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, that in fact, we don't need to wait for Merrick Garland to decide that we are worth protecting. At the state level, you can get charges against Donald Trump. If you are in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, then your state had fake electors in it. They attempted the fake elector scheme with your state. That means your state can pursue state charges against this son of a bitch, and you should. Link in the description. Contact your attorney general. Tell them you would like a state level investigation opened into the fake elector scheme. There is nothing, despite the whining and crying you will hear in response, there is nothing stopping these attorney generals from running a state investigation concurrent with whatever federal investigation is going on. Nothing at all. And by the way, a conviction on the state level means that Trump cannot be rescued by a pardon from a foolish Democrat, whoever that may be by the time the conviction finally arrives, if it turns out, after all, we do live in a just country. Take it seriously. You should insist that the people who are in charge of protecting you actually do their jobs, because if you don't insist, they won't.